Yes, well, thank you, Eva, and thank you for great panel. And if I may borrow one phrase from that is, do we not all suffer from information overload?
That's your part of job now.
Yeah, well, at least for me, having listening into the whole debate, I'm certainly feel like I'm suffering from it. And also thank you to the great debate on the AI. I think there were so many angles put together that I think for a poor old human brain, it's quite a challenge. So if I have to look at these 2 days of what we looked at, I would say, if I have to give in a nutshell, the main takeaway it is how risky it is to use the old thinking to address new challenges. I think that to me is one of the key takeaways, because we have to adapt, we have to keep up the pace, and the biggest risk is to pretend nothing changes. And based on that, keep our decision making, keep our policies, and etc., etc. The other thing that I take away is, if you were looking for certainty in this event, you didn't get much of it. We're still in uncertain environment. We are still in uncertain world. We're still in uncertain future. And that is going to stay with us. So there is no crystal clear clarities that we can rely on and expect them to be the kind of guiding light. Uncertainty is there to stay. The broadening of the nature of conflict. I think that's for me another area of consideration when we think about it. Of course, for us, from a StratCom perspective, we always say, well, information domain has always been part of the conflict. But when we look at the contemporary world, what we see is how much it is broadening. And it doesn't mean that the old conflicts are going away. The good old kinetic conflict is still there and very much at large, but we just keep adding layers and layers and layers. And the takeaway is we have to keep up. Once again, we have to adapt. And also, you cannot put just one entity in a society like the militaries or security establishment in charge of dealing with that problem, because the nature of that problem is growing bigger and bigger, affecting the society. And in some cases we see that even if the military or national security establishment is doing quite a good job, still the nature of this cognitive conflict is still getting into the society and taking away some of the fundamentals from a democratic society. So we have to also broaden our response. And I can only commend the countries that have already started to work in this line. And I think also those who have not started, that is the last moment to do so. I like the ideas that we had on the discussion on deterrence. And I actually also here I will borrow a new phrase, which I would rephrase in good old Latin, cogito ergo deterraro. So to use the Lithuanian foreign minister's idea, if I think, I deter. And that's, I think, also a good way to put the perspective to things and the way we have to use the communication, strategic communication, to make sure the deterrence works, is there are no automaticity into these things as it was during the Cold War period, where there was very much a statement in the nuclear power itself and the annihilation power it held, not only for people but to the world at large. We have to become much more creative with these things and really use our brain to understand how to make sure that we can still use deterrence to limit or to not have the conflicts, which I think is important, and we have to improve on that. That's clear. And also, when we think from a military perspective, I was very encouraged by General's points about forward-leaning thinking on part of NATO, as well as Deputy Secretary General's remarks from yesterday about really embracing the new reality, embracing what the future is bringing and trying to do as best as possible. So we're trying to kind of bring the best security to people, and as I've said, I was encouraged to hear that both the General as well as the Deputy Secretary General both had a very visionary approach to these things. But of course, as I've said in a prior element, it's not only to the military. It is about societies. And as a number of times during our conference was alluded, it's also about the very core elements of the democracy. It's the way we as a societies are able to react, the way we process information, the way technologies, including social media, algorithms, are bringing to us these information bits and pieces and creating the perceptions and worldviews that we react to. And as we yesterday morning discussed, infodemics and the pandemics have brought that issue to the forefront and shown the fragility of the democracy. We shouldn't be complacent that democracy is something that we have to take for granted. We have to work every day to make sure that democracy is safe, sound, and alive and delivers the values that we as citizens of democratic countries expect it to deliver. And if we don't work on these issues, it might disappear. And I think that is also something that kind of widens that perspective from a national security perspective. Is it the role of a military to do so? Is it the role of a national security establishment? Not really. But if we don't do that, that's a major national security problem. So it is interlinked. So we have to have a kind of a discussion and input from a national security perspective into these solutions that have to be made in these areas. And ultimately, I was also encouraged, I think optimistically, about the fact that finally we are seeing the rules for the new technological environment being written as we speak by EU, and as we see also the US is starting to do more on that front. Does it mean that it will solve the issue? I'm afraid not entirely, because the technology is moving so fast and humans are reacting to these changes quite in unexpected ways. And as many said, the regulation is lagging behind. But at least we have something to count on. Ultimately, it is, of course, about things like trust. Trust within the society, trust into the institutions, trust into the science, trust into each other. And that is something that we really lack at that moment. And that is something also that we cannot rebuild in a moment or two. But to me, it is always something that we have to consider really, really important part of a strong society, resilient society, society that can defend itself from all kinds of threats and risks from wherever they might come. So it is a really important aspect. So, as I've said, many takeaways. Many people might have seen the different perspectives, and I think the nature of this discussion is all about having to enrich oneself, and with the food for thought, the ideas, to go back and try to do a more informed job, more targeted job, more precise job on the things that we are entrusted to do. So we've been really lucky to have all of you with us. There have been 1,500 viewers looking at this conference, and thank you for bearing with us. We have had participants from 56 countries, which is, I think, a tremendous opportunity and honor for us, but also shows the global significance of an issue. And also some elements of this will have to be solved within a regional context, but as in many panels it has been discussed, much of that has to be addressed globally. And I think, and I hope, our conference gives just a little bit of a context and an impetus for that global debate to go forward. With that, I have to thank you, all of the people that made this event possible. And I have to conclude, we didn't have really technical glitches, which I think is really, really surprising. Not that I did expect, I always count on my excellent team, but in these days this is something that one has to value. So much thanks to the technical team, so much thanks to the COE for the work you put into making this conference possible. In particular, I want to thank Zane, Ieva, Linda, and also Gunnar for the program. And of course, I would want to finish by saying that I hope to see you soon. And the next time we will hope to see you is on the 7th of June, when we will be having a seminar on emerging trends in social media, a bit more focused, more specialist-focused event on the new trends, technologies, solutions, tips for the professionals. But by and large, of course, I hope to see you back in Riga next year, and all fingers crossed that on the toes as well, hope to see you in person here. With that, thank you all. Thank you very much. See you in Riga.